If you actually believe Muhammad flew to heaven on a winged horse, that's an anti-scientific belief.
And that could be wrong.
But that very well is wrong.
But that doesn't change. That doesn't change. How do you know it's wrong?
Oh, come on. You're a man of the 21st century.
No, I'm just asking. It comes back to my original question. The rational position is the agnostic. The rational position is the agnostic position.
Why up there?
The rational position. I didn't say up there. I didn't pick a place.
Okay, well, why would a winged horse be the way to get to heaven if it's not up there?
I asked a question about. You asked about proof. I'm all for saying I can't prove it, but can you prove he didn't do it? I mean, this is the end-old debate.
Didn't fly to heaven on a winged horse?
I'm just asking on your criteria. I'm just asking on.
No, I can't prove it.
Hey, this is good. Can I prove that he didn't fly on a winged horse to heaven? Come on. Richard Dawkins versus Islam. Full interview and Q&A. Richard out here facing Islam. Be safe out there. There's all sorts of stuff happening in the world. I didn't like him when I was a Christian. I'm just going to be honest. I did not like him. He fought against what I believed. He was an enemy of the faith. Thankfully, no radicalization there for me to act upon something like that. But I didn't like him. I watched him debate John C. Lennox. I watched him engaging with William Lane Craig, or it seemed like there was a video where they engaged. Not sure if they've debated ever. But I've watched many of his debates. I didn't like it. The snarky, scientific answers he would give. But today, I can tolerate Richard Dawkins. And so I'm looking forward to hearing his take specifically as it engages Islam.
The debating chamber that's witnessed such legendary orators as Winston Churchill, Benazir Bhutto, and of course, Kermit the Frog. I've come back to the Union today to sit down with the world's most famous atheist, Professor Richard Dawkins, to put faith on trial and to ask, is religion evil?
Well, that's just that question alone. Is religion evil? I mean, there's good and bad that can come out of it, right? I'm going to skip this little intro here where they're showing radicalism and the different things that have gone on and battles.
Our ignorance and unravel the mysteries of the universe.
That science
has also poisoned the environment, unleashed killing on an industrial scale, and now threatens our entire planet.
All right, here we go.
My guest today, however, stands firmly on the side of science and has provoked controversy with his attacks on religion. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Richard Dawkins. One of the most prolific thinkers of his generation, he shot to fame in the 1970s with his research into genetics, and his book, The Selfish Gene, transformed evolutionary biology. His most famous work, The God Delusion, sold millions of copies and has been translated into more than 30 languages. Richard, thanks so much for joining us here on Al Jazeera. Before we go any further, I just want to check something. Are you an atheist?
For all practical purposes, yes. Nobody can actually say for certain that anything doesn't exist. But I'm an atheist in the same way as I'm an a-leprechaunist and an a-fairyist and an a-pig unicornist.
So you're not 100% sure God doesn't exist, but you're sure enough to make it practically...
I'm as sure as you are sure that fairies and leprechauns don't exist.
And do you see an equivalence between the idea of God and the idea of a fairy and a leprechaun?
The evidence for both is equally poor.
Dude, he's pretty concise in his language. The way he's just describing his not believing in this stuff. So I am on the same page of going, I'm not persuaded, but I can't rule out that that's a possibility. I'm just not, I'm not on the side of thinking that's what makes the most sense right now.
You say in The God Delusion, one of my favorite sentences that jumps out of the page, that the God of the Old Testament is a petty, unjust, unforgiving control freak, a vindictive, bloodthirsty ethnic cleanser, a misogynistic, homophobic, racist, infanticidal, genocidal, filicidal, pestilential, megalomaniacal, sadomasochistic, capricious, malevolent bully.
Holy moly! That's pretty heavy.
As a piece of rhetoric, superb. But do you really believe that?
Congratulations on getting megalomaniacal right, by the way. Most people fumble on that. Yes, if you've actually read the Old Testament, I think you would have to agree. It's hideous. It's an anti the God of the Old Testament who is a monster.
But also the God of the Quran, the New Testament, the Hindu scripture?
Well, the God of the Quran, I don't know so much about. The God of the New Testament is widely advertised as...
And that needs to change. More people need to study these other religions, Islam, you name it, right? We need to learn. We need to broaden our scope. And I notice this happens a lot with atheists. A lot of atheists just don't know. Not all. I see someone like Aaron Ra, they read the Quran, but a lot of atheists just don't study a lot of these other religions or even deeply on biblical religion that much. There are many who are experts and scholars who do, but like there's a very narrow focus often. This is going down an interesting rabbit trail. Let's see what happens.
Being a bit more gentle, and certainly on the whole he is. There are things about the New Testament that I find in a way almost more objectionable than the Old Testament. But the sheer horror of the character, I said he was the most unpleasant character in all fiction, because I regard it as fiction, of course. And yes, he is. I mean, he's jealous, he's vindictive, he's callous, he's cruel.
And yet this is a God that is worshipped by, loved by, adored by, followed by billions of people.
I hope not. I hope that the God that is adored by millions of people is a grown-up kind of God.
So I think there's levels to this stuff. There is levels to this stuff. So I don't think most believers believe the God of the Old Testament as the God of the Old Testament is written. And I could see someone who's a Muslim reading the Old Testament and not being so moved in such a ethically, ooh, that's a bad God way, especially when the climate of the origins of Islam is conquest. Like, it's easier to see your God reflecting battle or warfare or being much more harsh when you were birthed out of conflict, birthed into war. This kind of religion in the setting, especially during the 7th century. So that's one thing. But most Christians I know do not believe the God the way the text clearly is described. They find ways to make that God not the thing or justify things, but really make him out to be a gentle father who sometimes has the discipline, but not this way that Richard's perception is.
Is no longer, I hope that most people the kind of people I would like to know who worship and admire him, regard those stories as not literally true. Now, there are some who do regard them as literally true, and I suspect they either haven't read the Old Testament or they're not the kind of people I would wish to know, because you do not want to worship a character like that. By all means, worship.
This is why he got so much hate mail and did like a funny YouTube video where he's opening hate mail from love mail from Christians, and it's so bad, but it's funny.
Some kind of great spirit of the universe, some kind of creative intelligence who created the universe, but don't worship this vile, vindictive monster of the Old Testament.
Why throw around these sweeping statements about religion? Not the God of the Old Testament, but religion itself being evil. I mean, do you believe religion is evil?
So this is a good pushback, okay? I like that he is asking that, because I cannot say all religion is. And if religion is evil, so is just the way that humans operate in every kind of tribal system, every political system, there's always going to be something, and it's just humans who do a lot of crazy stuff. So I am not of the persuasion that it's just religion that poisons everything. I think it plays a significant part, or it can, but it also could play a significant part on justice or goodness in the world that we see. And so what are the tools we're using? Religion's kind of that tool in a way. And we evolved, obviously, to adopt and utilize religion as a natural thing. So somehow it serves its natural purpose in the world for where we are as humanity, but it isn't inherently necessarily evil. I'll say there are what seems to be broken parts about it, and especially people who are dogmatic. So Richard pointing out that people who don't believe the Old Testament literally are kind of people you'd want to meet. I get it. I get it. But I think a lot of people who read the Bible and say they believe it don't really absorb the stuff that Richard's highlighting here. They don't really take it in and see why it's complicated or it's a problem.
No.
But you say plenty of times in this book that religion is evil. You said in a speech famously that I think a case can be made that faith is one of the world's great evils, comparable to the smallpox virus, but harder to eradicate.
I do think that, yes. Because what I'm talking about there is faith, where faith means belief in something without evidence. Because if you believe something without evidence, then that justifies anything.
Okay, I'm tracking. I get it. And look, I've been on the side of echoing this kind of sentiment. But it's kind of partly a straw man and then partly real. Like, people can believe in anything if they're willing to believe in anything. But I think most of the time what people are trying to believe in is Jesus died and rose, and hopefully we will too. They're suffering. They believe there's going to be light at the end of the tunnel. They believe that they're going to heaven after they die, or they're going to see their loved ones after they die. Typically, that kind of outlook can be something you could see someone having some hope in a desperate or bad situation, and we're all going to face those. But then they have faith where people are flying airplanes into tall buildings, into towers, and they believe that doing jihad will cause them to go straight to heaven, which is why I think more should have been studied on Islam from Richard Dawkins before this interview, it seems, if he didn't know much about the God of Islam. That's unfortunate, because it may be worth knowing more about the context, the Quran, and their God and their theology. So you can find very bad, and you could see why someone might want to have faith and believe in things, the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things that aren't seen. Whereas most Christians go, no, faith is not a believe in nothing, no evidence, and just having blind faith. No, we have evidence. But when the list of evidence comes up in the book of Hebrews that describes this, it's talking about prophets, the fathers. It's speaking about fictions that it's using as examples of faith. So it's not evidence, in my opinion, that is like concrete. These are stories. Again, no solid basis. So you can have faith that can really cause chaos, and I think that's what Richard's saying. But then there's some who have faith that I know are harmless, and they do all sorts of good.
You're no longer vulnerable to somebody coming back at you and saying, hang on a minute, let me argue the case. If you believe it without evidence, which is what faith is, then you don't argue the case. You say, no, I'm not arguing that case. This is my faith. It's mine. It's private. I don't dissent from it. I don't retreat from it. You're just going to have to accept it. Now, that is evil.
And yet you spend so much of your time debating people of faith. So clearly people of faith are interested in having discussions. They're not just all blind believers insisting on their way of...
Well, nobody said anything about all of them. I mean,
So I get what Richard's saying. And it's tough because when you're on a path, you're like free, like me, I'm on this journey, right? I'm on a free path to try and figure out what the answers are. What is this? What is the universe? What's the truth?
The vast majority of religious people are perfectly good, nice people, as you are. There's no suggestion I've ever made that all religious people are evil. Of course not. There is a logical progression that goes from believing in faith, having faith that your God tells you to do something, and doing terrible deeds.
Yeah, there's plenty of that. There's also plenty of good, right? Good and bad. And I don't think, I think we just have to be aware that sometimes people having faith, like giving to others in hopes that you're going to get something back, right? Karma, so to speak, or some form of returning from the good that you put in the world will come back to you. There's this hope or faith that it will boomerang. If I give to others, it's going to be rewarded to me in some way. So there's a sense in which believing in something that may not actually be true can also be for the betterment of society. And I've said this before, I don't know statistics and numbers, but if I'm going to put it this way, if I'm an atheist, right, and having some belief in God ultimately not only made a better world, even if we had to make believe that God existed, I would go down that path because it ultimately would be the best experience for this little blimp of light that we get in the sun. that would make better sense than bucking against it and not realizing we're just animals here on Earth trying to make, sense and survive and whatnot. I don't think that necessarily has to be the case. We're just working out the kinks as we go, trying to figure out a way to educate people so that they don't have to hold on to these old ideas as if those are the facts and once for all time dogmas.
Like suicide bombing, like flying planes into skyscrapers. The vast majority of people of faith don't do such terrible things. But those people who do terrible things do it believing that they are righteous and good, and they think that they're doing the will of their God. So they're not evil people. They're actually good people by their own lights. They believe they're doing good things. And that's why religion is evil, because it can make you do evil things, believing that they are good.
I feel the same way, not only about religion, but politics. Your in-group believes they are justified and righteous in doing what they do and how they act and how they communicate about the other group. They vilify and are easily able to show the others are not good. And it can go to the extremes of what we just saw with Charlie Kirk, for example, where taking out your enemy is good and celebrated, actually. And he did a very good thing, technically, at the end of the day, in many people's eyes. Now, this person, they don't want to own him, but they're thankful for this guy doing what he did. That's insanity to me. That is the kind of thing, apart from faith, that I think just tribalistically we have a problem of with humans, right? So the act about 9/11, these people in some people's eyes are saints. They're martyrs. They're saints. They literally did a righteous deed. And I imagine to some ideologies within political spheres, this person and what he did to Charlie Kirk is righteous and justified and good. That's how insane that can be.
Do you really believe that people who go out and carry out suicide bombings, it is faith? Religion is to blame, not geopolitics, not the world, not their lives, not what's going on around us. It's religion, plain and simple.
Not always. It's not in the case of the Tamil Tigers, for example. But I think in a great majority of cases it is, and I think it certainly makes it a hell of a lot easier. The evidence is plain that in many Islamic suicide bombers, you talk to them, those who fail, you talk to them afterwards, they've got paradise on the brain. They're desperate to go to a martyr's heaven, and that's what they think about.
Professor Robert Pape of the
That's pretty interesting.
University of Chicago studied every known case of suicide terrorism, 315 cases. And he came to the conclusion that there's, quote, little connection between suicide terrorism and Islamic fundamentalism or any of the world's religions. The taproot of suicide terrorism, he says, is nationalism. It's about land, it's about power, it's about politics. It's not about faith. Faith is just a cover. What do you know that he doesn't know?
Well, I've seen other evidence. There are different people say different things. I've seen plenty of testimonies of suicide bombers who have said precisely that they do it because they want a martyr's paradise.
Do you include the 7/7 bombers in that case as well?
Yes, I believe so.
Have you watched their suicide videos?
I'm not sure that I have, no.
This is crazy. Like, it's got to have something to do with it. So you hear Richard say, yeah, it has a major part to do with it. The other guys pushing back going, well, 300-something interviews, it seems to be much more about nationalism. And that plays, I guarantee you, that plays a significant role. But it should play some kind of role, this jihadi, faith, death kind of cult mentality.
They talk about Afghanistan, they talk about Iraq, they talk about crusades, they talk about war between the West and the Muslim world, they talk about invading armies. I mean, there's a lot of real world stuff in there. I'm not saying, of course not, that faith doesn't play a role, but I'm just interested in this idea that you think faith is the issue.
No, this is a good point, right? If Richard's saying, like, so hyper-focused on one aspect, then no, a lot of this stuff needs to be factored in. His environment, the economic system, are they suffering? What's their family circumstances? What are they being fed in their propaganda politically that makes them think about the enemy? And then, of course, it helps to say, well, look, I got a ticket to heaven. It's worth it. And it's also a sacrifice to protect my own or whatever it might be. And they go and do it. You got to imagine like soldiers in America that go to war, combat, on behalf of America. They believe they're doing self-sacrifice. Often they are carrying their faith and sacrificing their life or laying down their life, willing to go to protect, they believe, their own, right? They believe it, whether you agree or don't agree. This is, I know because my father was a soldier, retired Green Beret Special Forces. So I'm sitting here thinking to myself, they really believe they're just in doing what they're about to do and go to combat, and they think that they're protecting us. So there's got to be more to it. And it's not like my dad was like Roman Catholic, I need to be a martyr and go die for it. But I do wonder if it's a bit different with jihad and its theology in Islam. And how prevalent is that ideology versus, say, the Christian faith that if I die in the act, I've become a martyr or something. I don't know.
You said in a very famous column you wrote 4 days after 9/11 that this came from religion.
There are enormously good reasons for people to take political action. And this we see in Northern Ireland, we see it in Afghanistan, we see it in Sri Lanka, where the Tamil Tigers operated. So yes, there are political reasons, but the promise of a martyr's heaven, which is, you cannot deny that this is part of Islamic doctrine. Martyrs go straight to paradise.
Yes, but not terrorists, not murderers, not criminals.
Okay, so this is funny because we know he's Muslim. And he's obviously a much more progressive Muslim. He's not obviously a fan of the extremism he's seen from many radicals who have committed these things. But Dawkins is, making a good point, but he's trying to argue, like I've heard many Muslims do, no, if you kill one man, you kill all mankind. That quote that they say comes from rabbinic literature. That he's kind of trying to defend this idea that, no, my religion doesn't allow that. They're not going to heaven. Well, Muslims who agree and align with this and will find scriptural backing disagree with this guy. Yes, they will. And in fact, if you're not actually committing yourself to this level, there's a chance you won't go to heaven. It's interesting to hear, but that's what I'm seeing right now.
Well, they believe that because they're told it by their imams.
But then what about the majority of the world's Muslim clerics and ulama who came out and condemned 9/11 straight
Well, I'm
afterwards?
delighted they did, but they were pretty quiet about it.
What about the argument that says human beings are prone to violence? They're prone to carrying out crimes against their fellow man. You can blame religion, you can blame politics, you can blame economics, lots of factors, lots of excuses. What I don't get is, why do you only focus on religion? For fairness, why don't you also isolate the other factors?
There are lots of other factors, and I'm quite happy to say that, yes. There are lots of, if you look at the wars of history, some of them have been about religion, plenty of them have not been about religion. I never said religion is the sole cause of wars and violence.
You may not have said that, but you would accept that the new atheists, people like Sam Harris, the late Christopher Hitchens, have blamed a lot of history's wars on God and religion, and you make a similar suggestion in The God Delusion.
Yeah, I would blame a lot of history's wars, but the most terrible wars in history, the two major wars of the 20th century, are nothing to do with religion.
You accept that point?
Yeah.
So yeah, I like this. It's leading to the point that, not all of these massive crazy genocidal wars that have happened are led because of religion. But if you can't factor religion in, and I think religion connects to politics and nationalism and stuff like that as well for many of these religions, then I think you're just missing some of how faith or religion can play a role into those human instincts to fight and kill and all that kind of stuff.
And the Cold War and Vietnam.
Yes, I would, of course, yes.
So when you have a situation where some of the world's worst crimes were carried out not by believers, how then does that square with your idea that it's religion that causes good people to do bad things? It's religion that's driving violence. Your original statement against religion at the start of this.
Dogmatic belief in something like religion or something like Marxism or something like Nazism, these are all, or indeed patriotism. I mean, my country, right or wrong. These are all pernicious beliefs which can drive people to do terrible things. And in the Second World War, Hitlerism was driven by racism, by a sort of sub-Wagnerian pagan religion which Hitler revived. Stalin's atrocities were motivated by a dogmatic belief in Marxism.
And atheism.
Stalin happened to be an atheist, but he was never motivated
The
specifically.
Soviet Union was not based on scientific rationalism, on the elimination of religion and God?
Stalin persecuted the church. Stalin persecuted just about everybody.
Are you saying that the Soviet Union, the leaders of the Soviet Union, were not driven by a hatred of religion?
I think there was some propaganda that likely worked against religion in the Soviet Union. I'm not a historian. Richard Dawkins is not a historian. So let's see what he says, though.
And a belief that science and human progress and materialism was the way forward.
They believed that materialism, science, human progress, those are kind of there was a Marxist slant on those words, and they were hideously misused.
Mao Zedong, when he invaded Tibet, told the Dalai Lama that religion is poison. The subtext to the late Christopher Hitchens' book was religion poisons everything. Can you blame people of religion for saying, hold on, we've heard these ideas before, that religion poisons everything and it leads in one direction?
It's an incidental fact that Mao Zedong and Stalin happened to be atheists. They
Incidental,
were not,
it wasn't core to communism.
I think it was not core to communism, no.
So when Karl Marx was talking about religion being the opiate of the masses, that was just a throwaway line.
I like that the audience is kind of cheering on both guys, right? It's almost like a debate.
Yeah, I mean, that was an out of context statement. I mean, what on earth do you think that's got to do with atheism? I don't know.
Let me put a statement in context to you. Albania, one of the world's worst dictatorships, tyrannies that we've seen in the last 100 years. Article 37 of Albania's communist constitution declared, quote, "The state recognizes no religion and supports atheistic propaganda in order to implant a scientific, materialistic world outlook in people."
What do you think you're saying? I mean, that's an appalling thing to say. Of course it is.
Why is that an appalling thing to say? What do you disagree with in that statement?
Why would I want to support atheistic propaganda? I support science and truth.
So this I get what both of them are saying. And now we're getting to a point where will they understand each other, and will Dawkins see why this guy's saying what he's saying and why it makes sense to him, and then why Dawkins vice versa?
You don't support spreading atheism?
I support spreading science and truth. If that happens to be atheism, I support it. I'm not going to start bullying people into being atheist. I'm not going to start trying to compel people to be atheists. That was what the Albanians were doing. It's nothing to do with what I want to do.
Of course, but you'd like to persuade them not to be believers and become atheists.
I'd like to raise consciousness in a gentle, civilized way, using argument, rational argument from evidence.
In your book, you say,
man, that's a hard rope to walk, a tightrope. Because you do want people to think. You want people to be critical. You want people to use rational thinking and stuff. But when does encouraging, gently wanting people to do this not turn into social pressures that end up causing people to feel like they need to join that? This happens in every social change that we see in the world, politically, but also religiously. And you kind of have to understand that, like, no matter what you do, you're going to be creating this idea that others should probably walk down if you're pushing this kind of idea, right? So no matter what you do, it's kind of walking a tightrope on what this guy's trying to argue against with Dawkins. I hope you get where I'm coming from here, because I want people to do that. I want people to consider these things, but I don't care that they become atheist. Because I don't think the root of the problem is, do I think there's something out there? Do I believe in a higher power? No. For me, it's more about like getting away from radicalism and fundamentalism and naive believing that cause you to possibly be so naive that you do dumb shit. That's my personal stance.
It's like lots of evidence for the bad things religion's done. What I wonder is, if you were being fair, wouldn't you have also included some of the good things that religion's done?
My passion is for scientific truth. I don't much care about what's good and evil, actually. I care about what's true. I mean, do you actually believe in your Muslim faith? Do you believe that Muhammad split the moon in two? Do you believe that Muhammad flew to heaven on a winged horse, for example? I pay you the compliment of assuming that you don't.
Hold on. Dude, Richard's switching it up on him, right? To kind of point out what he cares about more is just the facts, right? Let's go back a little. And let's see what he says here. 49, let's go down to 44.
that Muhammad flew to heaven on a winged horse, for example, I pay you the compliment of assuming that you don't.
No, I do. I believe in miracles.
You believe that?
Yes.
You believe that Muhammad went to heaven on a winged horse?
Yes,
This is so good. This is funny.
I believe in God. I believe in miracles. I believe in revelation. I mean, the point here is that let's assume I'm wrong.
Look at Richard getting anxious in his seat going, you've got to be shitting me, dude. You believe that he rode on a winged horse to heaven, Pegasus.
Richard, I'm wrong.
Let's
assume I'm wrong. I'm wrong. I'm happy to concede that, Richard. I'm happy to concede it. I'm wrong. All religions are wrong. God does not exist. We're all mad. The issue is we exist. We've existed for a while. I think even Christopher Hitchens said, and you've said in your writings, we're not going anywhere. So my question to you is, why not acknowledge, for example, the good things that religion has done? Do you accept that religion has done good things, despite all of our mad beliefs and our miracles?
I accept that individual religious people have done an enormous number of good things.
Not driven by religion.
Well, I mean...
Here again, here we are at this, the guy on the right here, the gentleman interviewing Richard Dawkins, when evils are committed, he likes to distance the potential of religion causing bad. But when religion is involved, and he wants to create a connection between religion causing good. And so there's a sense in which he's trying to say, religion hasn't caused good? Yeah, religion has. Religion hasn't caused bad? Yeah, religion has. So when you talk about Islam and you get into jihad and all that kind of stuff, you can tell he's trying to create a chasm, but when it comes to good, he wants to try and show that religion is a cause for good. And I just think you're going to get both. You're going to get both.
Who knows?
You're mean-spirited. You won't give any credit at all.
Take somebody like Martin Luther King, for example.
Reverend Martin Luther King.
Yes. Obviously, he was a cleric. I imagine that fed into the good things that he did. Plenty of other things did. He was a great admirer of Gandhi, and he was a great admirer of nonviolence. He was a brilliant and wonderful, great man.
Would you disconnect MLK's nonviolence and Gandhi's nonviolence from their very strongly held religious beliefs? They didn't.
Well, I think it's not a thing that I really care about, actually. I mean, I think they were...
You do care about it, Richard. You're saying that people carry out violence in the name of God. And I cite you an example of very famous people who have done good and non-violence in the name of God, and you say, I'm not interested.
If God doesn't exist, then doing something good in his name it's great that something good gets done, but there's no evidence at all that believing in God makes you more likely to do good things. I can't see any noble, logical connection between being religious and doing good things.
Let's concede that God does not exist. Let's concede that religion is false. My problem here is trying to understand why some of the new atheists are so anti-religion when religious people clearly are doing lots of good things and they're doing it in the name of God.
I've never denied that religious people are doing good things and non-religious people are doing good things. I care about what's true. I'm an educator, I'm a scientist, and I want people to understand the truth about the universe in which they live. That's what I care about. And I regard religion as a distraction, and in some cases a pernicious distraction from true education.
Okay, his point, I can empathize with what Dawkins is saying here. I can. It would be great if humans could realize that we could be good without the gods, without a god, and to understand that you don't need that to do it. I wonder if people, philosophers like Plato, deep thinkers who understood ethics and morality and looking at the world, the sciences and how humans operated and thought, maybe they thought there's no way. They need to think, they need to believe, but maybe that's how humans were, and that in the time in history in our evolution, it's like you see a group of people who are starting to deconvert. They're great people. They're seeing things the way you do. They're very moral. They want to do right, and wrong is not okay, right? We have the ethics, but we don't need the God. We have the meaning, but we didn't need the God. We have purpose, all of these things, and we don't need the God. And if it's factual that there's no God, and we can find a way to make the world better and a way to make society better, great. But there are some things religion gives that I don't know if we can get from any other types of worldviews to comfort that. Life after death. Be cool to extend life, and I imagine science will do that. But do you see the tough conundrum here?
Which I love and value the way you value and love your God.
Can you not do both?
Well, so long as they don't contradict
There's a divide,
each other.
Richard.
As long as they don't contradict each other. But if you actually believe Muhammad flew to heaven on a winged horse, that's an anti-scientific belief.
And that could be wrong.
But that bloody well is wrong.
But that doesn't change.
Yeah.
That doesn't change. How do you know it's wrong?
Oh, come on. You're a man of the 21st century.
No, I'm just asking. It comes back to my original question. The rational position is the agnostic. The rational position is the agnostic position.
Why up there?
The rational position. I didn't say up there. I didn't pick a place.
Okay, well, why would a winged horse be the way to get to heaven if it's not up there?
I asked a question about. You asked about proof. I'm all for saying I can't prove it, but can you prove he didn't do it? I mean, this is the end-all debate.
Didn't fly to heaven on a winged horse?
I'm just asking on your criteria. I'm just asking on.
No, I can't prove it.
Hey, this is good. Can I prove that he didn't fly on a winged horse to heaven? Come on.
I can't prove it wasn't a golden unicorn.
But I'm fascinated that you're rather talk about what animals the Prophet may or may not have used 1400 years ago, rather than talk about what Muslims or Islam is doing in the world today, good or bad.
Well,
that seems to be the distraction. If anyone's distracted, it seems to be you.
Well, since I'm distracted and I wanted to take the time to watch this with you, we will pick this up next time. What are your thoughts so far about this interview? Do you agree with what I'm sentimenting here? Do you have a difference of opinion? Do you think Dawkins is right? Or do you think that there's much more to the picture than what New Atheist have brought to the table? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the bell. Support us. MythVision Reacts will bring you more content soon. Thank you.